It's about the best known Derbyshire story there is, I think. The Little Red Hairy Man. And again, it's about a lead miner. Scraped a living like all lead miners did. And he had 3 sons. And one day his eldest son, well, his sons decided they didn't want to be lead miners. So one day his eldest son said, I'm going to go off and seek my fortune. And he asked his mum to pack him up a picnic, something to eat and something to drink. And so he went off down the road. I won't be back until I'm rich. So he walked down the road and down the road and down the road for what seemed like ages, but it was probably only a couple of hours, until he began to get hungry and thirsty. And he found a big rock sticking up at the side of the road. So he thought he'd sit on this rock and eat his picnic. And as soon as he opened it, out from the undergrowth beside him jumped a little red hairy man. And the little red hairy man said, please will you share some food and drink with me, because I'm really hungry. And the boy said a load of rude words and told him to off, disappear, don't come back. And so the little red hairy man did. And the boy finished his food and drink and went off down the road and wandered round for a few weeks and never did find his fortune, of course. And in the end he had to come home and be reconciled to becoming a lead miner like his dad. So then it was the turn of the middle son. And the middle son said, I'm going to go off and find my fortune. I'll succeed where my brother didn't. And he walked down the same road and he found the same rock. And he sat on it and opened his food. And out came what was probably the same little red hairy man and said, please will you share some food and drink with me? And the boy said, no, clear off, but all right, go on. And I'll save you a little bit when I've finished. And he saved the little red hairy man just the crust off his bread and the last few drops in the drink. And the little red hairy man said to him, I know what you're doing. You're trying to find your fortune. And I know where you'll find it. If you go up to the top of that hill, you'll find an old disused lead mine. And that's where you'll find your fortune. The boy was trying to get away from lead mines. He didn't want to have anything to do with that. So he took no notice at all and went off in his way and eventually came back home none the richer. And so then it was the turn of the youngest son. And if you are the youngest son in a fairy tale, you've got to be called Jack, haven't you? So Jack said, I'm going off to seek my fortune. He asked his mum for some food and drink, and off he went. Walked down the same road, found the same rock, sat down there, opened his food. Out jumped the little red hairy man. Please will you share some food and drink with me? I'm really hungry. And the boy said, yes, of course I will. And he broke his bread in half and gave the little red hairy man the bigger half. And he shared his drink with him. And the little red hairy man said, if you want to find your fortune, go to that old lead mine up there on the top of the hill. Well, you know, he wasn't very keen to go to the lead mine, but he thought, all right, nothing to lose. And he went up the hill, and there was the old shaft going down in the ground, and a windlass and a few bits of old tools lying around, obviously not used anymore, but waiting there beside it was the little red hairy man. And the little red hairy man said, if you jump into this basket, and there was a basket there attached to a rope, he said, I'll lower you down the mine, down into the ground, and that's where you'll find your fortune. So Jack got in the basket, and the little red hairy man wound the handle, and down and down and down and down and down went Jack. And it got dark, and it started to get warm, and after what seemed an age, the basket touched the ground at the bottom of this big shaft. Not in the darkness at the bottom of a mine, but in bright sunshine. Beautiful, sunny landscape. It wasn't the bleak Wirksworth landscape with a lowering sky like he'd left up the top. It was, you know, it could have been home counties or something like that. Cornfields, sun shining, happy peasants working in the fields. And waiting there was the little red hairy man. And he took out a copper-coloured ball. He said, if you want to find your fortune, follow this ball. And he threw it uphill, down dale, down the road, round the corners, until it came to rest against the side of a copper-coloured castle. And Jack went round the castle and he banged on the door, and out came a knight dressed in copper armour. and they fought. And copper's not very good for making armour, so Jack was able to beat him. And he went into the castle, down into the dungeon. There was a maiden in distress, locked up in the dungeon. And Jack set her free, and she said thank you very much and disappeared off. And there was treasure lying around. Gold, silver, money, jewels. And Jack was looking at it thinking, great, what shall I take? When the little red hairy man appeared and said, forget that lot. Follow the silver ball. And he threw a silver ball down the road, uphill, down dale, round the corners, till he came to rest against the wall of a silver-coloured castle. And Jack went round and found the door, banged on the door, and out came a knight dressed in silver armour. And they fought. And this was a harder fight than the copper one, but Jack was able to kill him. He went into the castle, down into the dungeon, and there was another maiden in distress, and Jack set her free, and she gave him a big hug and a kiss before she ran away. And there was treasure, gold, silver, jewels, spices, carved woods, statues, everything you could think of lying there. And Jack was thinking, what shall I take? When the little red hairy man appeared with a golden ball, and he threw the golden ball down the road, uphill, down dale, round the corners, until it came to rest against the wall of a golden-coloured castle. And Jack went and hammered on the door, and out came a knight dressed in gold armour, and they fought. And this was difficult. Jack began to think he'd bitten off more than he could chew. It was really hard. But then, just with a very clever, faint little twist, and he managed to get the knight in that tiny little gap between his breastplate and his helmet. And he killed the knight, he fell down dead. And Jack went into the castle, down into the dungeon. Another maiden in distress. Jack set her free, and she rewarded him in a way in which only young maidens can reward a young man. And then Jack looked at the castle. Gold, silver, jewels, statues, fancy coloured dresses, tapestries, every kind of treasure you could possibly imagine. The castle was full of it. And Jack had his little bag, and he was thinking, now what shall I take? What can I put in my little bag? And the little red hairy man appeared and said, forget that bag, use this one. And he gave Jack one of those bags that only appear in fairy tales. However much you put in it, there was always room for something else. So Jack got the whole castle full of treasure into this bag, threw it over his shoulder, with the young woman on his arm, because she hadn't run off. He went off on his way back home. Got home with the treasure, the young woman. They were made, they lived in luxury for the rest of their lives. But his two brothers, they were jealous. How come Jack could do it when we couldn't? And they tried to get from him the reason how he'd done it, but he didn't really tell them. But they did learn that it was something to do with that little red hairy man. And it was something to do with that old lead mine. And even though they went to have a look, they hadn't helped the little red hairy man, so the little red hairy man wasn't there to help them. And so they never did find the treasure. And so the moral of the story is, if you're ever out walking in Derbyshire and you stop to have a picnic and a little red hairy man appears and asks you for some of your picnic, well, share it with him, because you never know what you're going to get in return. So that's the story of the little red hairy man.